I'd like to, before Rishad comes up, I'd like to welcome an old friend of mine with NTT Data now to introduce Rishad, and thank NTT for their sponsorship in bringing Rishad to us as well in the event. So I want to welcome up Ron Gilson. Ron's a former CIO. Ron's ASUG volunteer and board member. And Ron, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paul. Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Is everybody still awake out there? Yeah. I would get everybody to stand up and do some head, shoulders, knees, and toes, but it might be easier if we just do head, shoulders, belly belt in the seats. But good to see so many folks out there. Kudos to Paul and the team that has worked so hard over the past few years to put together this wonderful community. Each and every one of you in this room and those online and in the other rooms makes this gathering of individuals a true community. Thank you for being here and sharing your wisdom, your insights, and your knowledge with your peers and colleagues. Couldn't do it without you. This is my first time attending the EA Learning Forum, and I'm truly excited about learning from each one of you and making some new connections along the way. As a proud sponsor of this morning's keynote, NTT is delighted to partner with SAP, ASUG, the EA community, and each of you on architecting, deploying, and supporting world-class solutions built on SAP technology. With decades of expertise in SAP implementations, NTT Data has been at the forefront of delivering innovative solutions that enable organizations to unlock the full potential of their digital ecosystems. Please take a few minutes to stop by our table and get introduced to our innovative programs, Wayfinder and Zero Cost Move, that are part of your helping you transform to your S4 environment. And also join us on Wednesday as we explore S4 transformation approaches in our session. Today, we have the distinct honor of hearing from a thought leader whose insights have consistently inspired global change. Rishad Tobaccowala is a visionary whose work has shaped our understanding of the evolving world of work. With a career marked by profound insights into technology and transformation, Rishad has become one of the most sought-after speakers in our industry. His latest book, hopefully you all have it, I've got it on Kindle. Book signing later today. All right, Rethinking Work is a profound exploration of the future of work in a era defined by digital disruption and the resetting of expectations in a post-COVID era. His insights have resonated deeply with leaders and innovators around the world, prompting a re-examination of strategies that ensure organizations remain competitive and future-ready. So let me share two quotes. I did read the book, and it was a wonderful book. Rishad, thank you for all of your wisdom and insights. A couple of quotes that stuck out for me. The first, just as the cost of computing is trending towards zero, and the internet made the cost of information distribution trend to zero, we will see AI driving the cost of knowledge to zero, right? So just stop and think about that a little bit. What happens when the cost of acquiring knowledge is zero, right? Profound, right? The second quote should hit a bit closer to home and hopefully make you pause and reflect a little bit on your personal journey. So relevance is a huge challenge for leaders, since no one likes to consider the possibility that they're obsolete. But relevance demands that we reinvent and rethink our futures. We have to make the commitment to adapt ourselves as a business and as a society to learn and grow alongside the machines. So my question for each of you today is, what are you doing today, tomorrow, and next week to make sure you remain relevant? So as we explore the nexus between innovative technologies and the transformative ideas that Rishad so eloquently champions, I invite you to open your minds to the possibilities that lie ahead. Please join me in welcoming our distinguished keynote speaker, Rishad Tobaccowala.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that great introduction. Thank you, everybody, for being here. My presentation is going to have one slide. Last time it had 0 slides. I was asked to, therefore, upgrade. So I went to 1 slide from 0. And this slide basically has 2 QR codes. One is for more about my book, which is at rethinkingwork.io. And the other is for almost everything I say today, you will find in writing at my free Substack, which is read by about 30,000 people every Sunday. And it's 100% free, no subscription, no advertising, and no data harvesting or affiliate marketing. So it's free. So with that being said, let me begin by saying that this conversation of mine is going to basically be talking to 2 people in this room. And you might say, clearly the guy has a math major, but he doesn't know how to count, because there are more than 2 people in this room. But there are actually 2 people in this room, and every one of you are at least 2 people. So the 2 people I'm going to talk to is the person who works for a company, who may be an enterprise architect, who basically helps companies architect their future. The other person I'm going to be speaking to is you, who are a company of one, who are trying to figure out how to basically architect your own future. Does it make sense? So there are 2 of you. One of you who work for somebody else, and one of you who work for yourself. And my basic belief is both of those are very important, and one feeds the other, and it isn't that you can forget one and only focus on the other. If you focus on yourself, you won't have a client. If you focus on a client, you might lose your tomorrow, and you might lose your client. So keep that in mind. So I'm going to give you a little key pointers from my book in the next 32 minutes. And then maybe leave 2-3 minutes for questions if we have time. So why is work important? So there are only 3 things that give human beings happiness on an ongoing basis. One happens to be physical and mental health. If you're physically and mentally healthy, you're more likely to be happier than if you are ill. Doesn't mean you can't be happy if you're ill, but if you are physically and mentally healthy, you're likely to be happy. The second is quality of relationships. The relationships you have either with friends, family, colleagues, the quality of relationships. And the third is meaningful, purposeful work. Those are the 3. If you have those 3, oddly, money follows. Kind of interesting. If you solve for those 3, you actually solve. Even if you don't have money, you tend to be happy. But if you don't solve for those 3, even if you have money, it doesn't work out. Now, here's the other interesting thing. If you have meaningful, purposeful work, you are likely to live much longer. So people who, for instance, are forcibly retired, actually their health turns downwards. Similarly, if you happen to have meaningful, purposeful work, it's less likely you'll get home and kick the dog. So in effect, meaningful, purposeful work is also highly correlated with quality relationships and with your health. So clearly, work is important. Now, what I believe is between January of 2020 and December of 2029, it's 10 years, work will change more than it has in the previous 50. So these 10 years, work will change more than it has in the previous 50 years. And you might say, why? I'm going to give you 5 reasons why. And interestingly, COVID is the least important. Everybody fixates on COVID. So let me give you and Jamie Dimon a little bit of advice. Okay? So Jamie retracted his statements. He said, not only should I curse, it's not that I'm opposed to work from home, I'm opposed to when work from home doesn't work. That was his new statement. So here's my belief. Whether you work 5 days a week in the office or 5 days a week at home has nothing to do with the future of work. So all these companies fixating on where we are working is a red herring. It's got nothing to do with the future of work. So I'll prove to you why it's got nothing to do with the future of work. So just imagine, this thing is changing more in the next 10 years and everybody's focusing on the wrong thing. So what is happening? So there are 5 big shifts going on. And last year I spoke about 4 shifts. But I'm going to use those lens and make them 5 and much more from a perspective of work. So the first is there are significant societal shifts going on. Globally, outside of 7 countries, population is declining everywhere. So it takes 2.1 children to keep the population the same. In the US, that number is 1.6. So if the US decides that they don't like legal or illegal immigration, the population of the US by 2075 will decline to 250 million people from 333 million people. So you won't have a housing problem because there'll be lots of houses and nobody will live. So that's an interesting way of solving that, okay? That number of 1.6 goes down to 1.3 in countries like Germany, 1.1 in China, 0.8 in South Korea. Declining populations outside of 7 countries in Africa and Asia. Second is we have aging population. The only population group that's growing all over the world outside of Africa is older people. 11,200 people turn 65 every year in the US. There are more people over 60 in China than in the United States. 20 million people are over 80 years old in Japan. And we talk about Gen Z. Interestingly, Gen Z is very important. 66% of baby boomers believe in capitalism. 22% of Gen Z believe in capitalism. 67% of Gen Z full-time employed people in the US have a side gig or side hustle with which they make a job, which they also create income. So one of the reasons people don't necessarily want to come back to the office is they got another gig going at the same time, right? And it's not necessarily just to make money. It's because either they're very passionate about that or they no longer trust institutions and companies, so they want to maximize their optionality. Then we obviously have technology, which you all know only too well. I won't go into any great deep technology, excepting basically saying that if you take technology and you take a third shift, which is marketplaces. So marketplaces is everything from anything that's cloud-based, and it can be Amazon Web Services is a marketplace, Etsy is a marketplace, Uber is a marketplace. So anything that basically puts buyers and sellers together is a marketplace. We're living in a world of marketplaces. So to a great extent, and these marketplaces are extremely global. So a lot of people talk about things like Temu and Shein, which are these big Chinese companies, and how big they're growing in the United States. What if I told you that the Chinese sales on Amazon are bigger than Temu and Shein combined in the United States? 52% of all of Amazon's products and services are manufactured and sold out of China in the United States. So the reality of it is we're living in a global world, and if people don't want to be in a global world, the world will reroute around them. Everything is global. There's absolutely no way to put the genie back in the bottle. It's global. And so to a great extent, when you think about global marketplaces, when you think about technology, it's pretty formidable. Now, with regard to technology, there are lots of new technologies. I'm going to just talk a little bit about AI, since it seems to be the flavor of the moment. In Harry Potter, there's a very famous character called Voldemort, those of you who've read or seen Harry Potter. And what is Voldemort known for? Voldemort is known for he who cannot be named. He's so scary when nobody even names him. So AI is the exact opposite of Voldemort. So whether it's relevant or not, we'd say AI. So my new name is Rishad.ai. It's going to increase my speaking fees because that's Rishad.ai. It's much better, right? I've got AI in my food. I'm sure you're going to be eventually basically have AI in the bathroom. It's going to be AI here, AI there, AI everywhere. And so to a certain extent, you might say, what the hell is wrong with these people? So I can make fun of it, but I do believe that even with everything we have heard so far, AI is still significantly underhyped. So I'm not saying it's overhyped. I'm basically saying it's underhyped. And the reason it's underhyped is for the reasons pointed out. AI is going to basically make the cost of knowledge go to zero. Now, people at Google tell me it's also going to make the cost of intelligence go to zero. I'm just going to pretend that knowledge and intelligence are slightly different, but maybe they're not, okay? But it's going to go to zero. And for those of you who've not had the opportunity to, and I've not actually used the latest, these things are moving so fast, Claude 3.7 from Anthropic, which came out, I think, yesterday. But the most recent, 3 weeks ago, I gave a talk and I said state of the art, and I showed all Google Gemini products. That time, Google had released VO and Mariner and Deep Research. And I could use Deep Research for their Deep Research because it was a part of my $20 a month subscription. And I started writing decks, which were as good as McKinsey decks in about an hour. Now, I do not have the $200 version of OpenAI, which is where their Deep Research is. So I've not had a chance to experiment with it. They say they will let poor people like us at $20 a month get it at some stage. But the reality of it is that the rate of what you can do and how fast you can do it is particularly interesting. And many businesses, not necessarily in the world of technology, but many businesses, including the world that I work in, which is the world of marketing services, price based on hours, butts and seats, how many people work on a job. What happens when the number of people who work on a job or the hours are reduced by 50% in the next year or two? Are companies set for revenue declines of 50%? If they begin to have suffering 50% revenue declines, how much technology will they buy or what technology will they buy? That's not working? Okay. All right. So, can you hear me? Can you hear me? A1? Okay. Now? Okay, perfect. Thank you. So one of the big things is AI is for big. And then we have this other thing called side hustle, side gig, which I told you about. And then finally, this is the impact of COVID. So the 5 things driving the future of work is these changing demographics, technology, including AI, the rise of marketplaces that everybody can access, side hustle, side gigs all over the world, and COVID. And here's the key with COVID. COVID made us think a little bit different, not about where we work, but why we work. Which is, when 2 million people in the US died around us, we kind of said, what the hell's going on? When for 3.5 years, companies' productivity went up and we did not have to go to work, we said, why are we reporting to this crazy person? Why are we moving our meat parts 2 hours into a location, going up an elevator, looking at a screen, putting on headsets, and going back? So our minds were like champagne corks. They came out of the champagne bottle, they swelled, and now everybody wants to put it back again. As I remind people, I don't care what meat you put in the cage, the animals have left the zoo. And they're not coming back. Because what we have actually entered is not a place of where you work. Because in effect, here's this really interesting thing. I'm a big believer in things like this. I'm a big believer in in-person interaction.
And in-person interaction is very important for a lot of reasons. For the reasons that actually a lot of people believe is true. Relationship building, networking, learning, a lot of reasons. But at the very same stage, when you want to build a relationship, you tend to basically go to a restaurant or bar. When you want to learn and grow, you come to events like this, right? So everybody says, well, then you should go to work for the water cooler. Everybody carries Dasani bottles. Nobody uses a water cooler. And most offices don't have water coolers. So the absolute lack of imagination as to where the future is people are saying, let's go back. The reality of it is the office and concentrated work in a place is only a 150 or 100-year phenomenon. People used to work from home before that. And the reason was because of factories. You needed factories and electricity, and people had to work there. But in today's world, which is an economy of knowledge, where you can work from anywhere, why are people still following a factory model? Does this make sense? So to a great extent, these are the reasons that things have changed. So with that being said, what should we do? So I believe every company today, every individual and every firm should seriously think about 4 things. The first is a new type of employee. So for instance, in most countries in the world, you have 3 types of employees: a full-time employee, a contract employee, and a freelance employee. So a full-time employee has full-time benefits, freelance has nothing, and a contract works for another company but ends up coming to you, but they're paid by the other company. So the majority of people in companies like Google and Meta are contract employees. They're not actually employees of Google or employees of Meta. For every 1 Google employee, there's 1.2 or 2 contract employees. And you see them with different badges. If you go to the cafeterias, they have different badges, right? So that's what people also don't realize, how different these are. Now, the issue really is if you begin to have a world where AI will require less people or less need for 100% of people, when you have declining populations and aging populations, and many people either want to look after aging parents or young kids and want to work from anywhere else, there may be a new type of employee, which I call a fractionalized employee. And this is not a freelancer. So a fractionalized employee is somebody at the end of a year, like in the US, you can sign up for an HMO, PPO at the end of every year. So at the end of every year, you get a very simple thing. Would you like to work 60%, 80%, or 100% next year? 3 days, 4 days, or 5 days. So you fill up a form and say 3 days, 4 days, or 5 days. And then based on what the demand and supply for the company is and demand and supply for the posts, the company says, you ask for 4 days, you can do 4 days. You ask for 3, no, you have to work 4, right? So whatever it is. And whatever you end up doing, you end up with that portion of your compensation. So if you're working 4 days, you get 80% of your base salary, 80% of your equity grant, 80% of your bonus target, but 100% of your health care. And now all of a sudden, companies can be very flexible. I can downsize and upsize and right-size without layoffs. I can mix and merge and match from all over the world talent in different ways. It's completely doable. I did it in my company. Why aren't we doing that? Right? We keep talking about talent. How come we don't try new types of talent models? So that's one. Second is this little AI thing. I've now decided, and this is not my concept, it's come from Mustafa Suleiman, who used to be at DeepMind, and I think he's now at Microsoft. He basically said at a TED talk that I listened to, think about AI as alien life forms. They're not human, but they're not a machine. They're like in between. So they're an alien life form. And people fall in love with alien life forms, by the way. People are, to a great extent. You should read New York Times articles about it. But when the alien life form talks back to you in customized languages, which they will, and understand you and know you, you don't think it's a machine, but don't make mistake that it's a person. It's in between. So the future really is human-alien integration. And how does we put those together? And one of the big things is to think about AI plus HI, where HI is human intuition, human insight, etc. But for everybody, one has to embrace the Borg, otherwise the Borg will embrace us. You have to understand AI and use it. But as importantly, ask another question as an organization about AI that very few people are asking. So a lot of people are going around and saying, I'm going to use AI to make myself more efficient. Very good, good idea, you should. Or they're running around saying, I'm going to use AI to make myself more effective. Very good. Or people are going around and says, I have now written an AI strategy. Not so good. So here's the key. I don't believe AI is going to be a differentiator for most companies. I believe AI is going to be a commodity and it's going to be like electricity. And I had this belief a year ago before DeepSeek. AI itself is a commodity. And it's like electricity. Because I am willing to pay $160 a month, I have better AI than most companies. Because I basically pay the $20 for 8 different models. Some of them are not models. Some are like Midjourney and Adobe Firefly. But for $160, I have the world's best AI. Most companies have one. And they guess what they do? They have the technology 6 months behind. 6 months behind is half as good. So I have twice as good, 8 of them, $160. Tell me, P&G, you got better technology than I do? Which means the real thing is how does your strategy get affected by AI? Not how do you write an AI strategy. So as you architect stuff is how do people think about that? But as importantly, and this is the very, very interesting thing, is could AI not only be about efficiency and effectiveness, but could it actually be about existential risk? And I'm not talking about us being blown up. I'm talking about something different. In today's modern world, we are expecting to see many companies with $1 billion of revenue. I'm not talking $1 billion of market cap. $1 billion of revenue with 100 employees or less. It's going to happen. Why? Because of AI gives you amazing capability. The ability to plug and play with talent anywhere. The ability to plug and play into marketplaces everywhere. So when you are thinking about systems architecture, what if the whole house burnt down and you had to architect from start with today? What would it look like? And the reason why existential risk is important is because if the newspaper industry had basically thought about digital technology as a way to make their printing presses work faster and their trucks move better, delivering newspapers that's more efficient and effective, would they have survived? No, because the digital world meant you didn't need printing presses and you did not need trucks, right? In fact, what it also proved that the value of content by itself without context is 0. So in effect, could we have to reimagine all of our businesses? That's the interesting question. And that question no one is talking about. It's about how do we make our current model more efficient and effective. But if your model isn't right for the future, making it more efficient and effective isn't the right way to go forward. So that is one of the key challenges that people have. So a new type of employee, how do you work with machines? How do you maximize in-person interactions? So how do you basically combine different spaces, including office spaces, to attract and retain the world's best talent? And how do you personalize by levels? So a few days ago, actually 3 months ago, I was asked to talk to Amazon about advertising, which is what I did. And then someone asked me a question, and the person who was there with me, I looked at her and I said, do you want me to answer this question? Because I've come to talk about advertising and they've asked me a question. And the question was, what do you think about our come back to the office 5 days a week policy? So I asked again the person, do you want me to answer? So they said yes. So here was my answer. My answer was very simple. One of the reasons I can work from anywhere is because of something called Amazon Web Services that you created. Okay? You all are a data-driven organization, and nothing in your CEO statement of coming back to work is built on a single shred of data. Read his statement. It's all I have a feeling. Number 3, one of the reasons I admire Amazon is because they personalize everything. You have now created a one-size-fits model for everybody, regardless of title, job, client, or age. So outside of the fact that you are rejecting Amazon Web Services, rejecting facts, and rejecting personalization, all of which your company has been taught, everything's fine. Everybody stood up and clapped. Right? Where have all the leaders gone? Which talks to my last point before I talk a little bit about the future in the last 7-8 minutes. We have entered the age of debossification. There are no more bosses. One of the reasons people don't come back to the office is they don't want to come back to the stupid boss. I said, it's not the space they're rejecting, it's you, you fool. This is why I'm unemployed. Okay. What people are looking for and what bosses do is bosses are built on zones of control. What people are looking for are leaders, and leaders are built on zones of influence. And every leader has some boss-like tendencies. You have to. And many leaders have some boss-like, which you have to. But what does a boss do? A boss spends most of their time, and ask yourself, how much of your time do you spend checking in, monitoring, allocating, measuring, and delegating? And how much of your time do you spend making, selling, guiding, building, mentoring? And if you spend more than 50% of your time doing the first left-hand side, be very scared, all that's going to be done by a machine. So we have to train ourselves to become leaders and stop being managers. Not that managers are important, but we need leaders plus managers. We just can't have managers. So that's really the reality. So when I tell people you have to rethink your strategy, try new types of employees, rethink how you lead, that's far more difficult than let's get people back into the office and everything will be solved, won't it? You see how stupid it is? How absolutely ridiculous it is, and how people are wasting their time. So I'm going to now end with the final 4 or 5 thoughts, and I will be therefore on time. These are the 4 things you need to do right now, which I've just mentioned, but there are 5 things to think about what will happen by 2029. And those are the 5 final chapters of my book. My book is called Rethinking Work, and the last 5 is basically reimagining the company, remaking the organization, retraining the workforce, and recalculating the financials. And then finally, something else. So I'll give you 3, 4 thought starters at the end, and you'll have the book. So the first one is, in the future, most companies will have fewer employees than they have today. Get used to it. And you're already seeing that happen in technology. Do you notice that Meta has laid off 25% of its people, but its revenue is larger and they just did another 5%? Notice what's going on, right? Very, very interestingly what's going on. So in effect, companies will have fewer employees than they have today. Number 2, however, there will be much more employment in the future than there is today. And the reason is there'll be many more companies than there is today. This year, 6 million new companies will launch in the United States, a record. And increasingly with AI, marketplaces, and new technology, more and more companies will launch. And so for the future ecosystem will be whales and plankton. Whales will be like SAP, a plankton will be like me. Okay? And the way to think about it is YouTube is a whale, a content creator is a plankton. And it'll be a whale and plankton world with the occasional squid and shark. Okay? But everybody in between will kind of wonder what the hell they're doing. If that makes sense? So that's one way of looking at it. The other one, and I'll sort of leave you with this, which is for you all. The future is very, very bright for a variety of reasons. Because A, all of us are going to have far more opportunities than we've ever had before. So I will leave you and think about each of you are a company of one. And if you actually think about what modern technology is going to do with the future of work, you can actually launch a company of one. So thank you very much. And if you want more, if you can put that next slide up.
Next slide. Thanks. So Rishad is doing a session at the end of today on upgrading our mental models or mental operating systems. And also he'll be around at the reception to sign copies of his books. So for those of you who have not been here before, we have a tradition.
Last time we did it upside down.
Yeah, we did the photo, the first one with the flag backwards. You think we've gotten better in a year?
I don't know.
Let's try it.
We're rethinking flags.
Okay.
It's backwards again.
No, it's backwards to you. No, it's backwards to you. It's a selfie with the crowd. So please stand up.
Perfect.
Rishad, face this way.
Face this way.
Yep, he's taking. Everybody, are you ready? Keep your eyes open. Take a few.